Hey guys, it's me Nina and we're back with another video. This time we are discussing Never Have I Ever Season 3. If you're interested to see my other comments on the other seasons, I will have other response videos linked down below, and also a playlist reacting to different types of South Asian media and so on, because I think it's really fun to talk about this stuff, especially from a South Asian reacting to South Asian media. And I always love seeing your comments, even when y'all disagree with me. So comment down below your thoughts and let's get into talking about Never Have I Ever. And I'm assuming you already know what the show is about if you're watching this. But if you don't, it basically is about this girl who lives in America and her experience just growing up and feeling like other, you know, like that feeling of being other, and yeah, dealing with the loss of her father. And to start things off, I've talked with my baby cousin about this, but first thing is Davey is so much more likable this season. I still think she's hypersexualized, which is a kind of one-dimensional character for South Asians that Mindy Kaling seems to really like. That scene in The Mindy Project, it was like that. And also she has a show called like The Sex Lives of whatever, and again, like hypersexualized, but she was toned down a bit because first season it was just like, I want to have sex with Paxton, and now she still wants to have sex with Paxton, I guess, but it's not the main plot point. And I think the show does actually point to larger issues of surrounding feelings of worth and feeling less than, and that made me like the season a lot more. And it sucks when you don't like the main character, in my opinion. I like rooting for and liking the main character of the story, and I think that this season really humanized Davey. We got to see more of her, like she was healing, you know, like she was less annoying because she was healing. And I think that even as a character, I empathized with her more. I empathized with her mom and how her mom had to deal with all these changes. And when you see Davey have what appears to be maybe a panic attack during, you know, the first time that she's gonna have a band performance since her dad passed away, and you see how that is then turned and used against her, you feel empathy again, because that's something you see in brown culture, where your mental health or physical or whatever illness is there is like you're dehumanized, right? Like that's the reason why there's such a stigma about talking about these issues. And it's not like people don't have them, it's just that we don't talk about them. So instead of giving people a place to heal from that sense of shame that they feel regarding mental health or physical illnesses, we are then shamed for it. So people hide it and it comes out in other ways, and it's continually hid, and that leads to more problems than if we were just upfront about it. But I've always had that point of view that these things should be talked about and people should be open about it. But when I actually saw the way that Davey was treated, it kind of made me understand why our parents' generation is sometimes so apprehensive about letting people know their quote-unquote dirty laundry, right? Because Davey was no longer seen as a good match for, what was his name? Dev? I'm probably getting his name wrong. The South Asian love interest, right? Because she has so many problems, right? Like Dev's mom in the moment is like, yeah, like blah, blah, blah. It's fine. You're going through a lot. Let's go home. But don't date my son, you know? Like my son has a bright future. And I saw on TikTok that other people felt this way. Like they thought that that Dev's mom and Nalini were actually gonna like become a couple, which they did not. But everyone got the ick, the feeling that like, this is not exactly what we thought it would be, when Nalini opens up about her daughter's struggles, and then Dev's mom's just like, oh, thank God I don't have to deal with that. And she definitely is patronizing a lot, right? And I found that funny too, because I'm like, you're a nutritionist. Like in my culture, I feel like doctors are held to the highest esteem, right? And like a nutrition degree for many levels is just like not viewed as high. So I thought there was like a little bit of like a plot hole there, because one, nutritionists don't make as much as doctors. So there is, I mean, like, again, I'm not saying I agree with it, but I think that there are like social hierarchies and so on, especially within a South Asian community. So I would think Nalini had higher social rank, at least in that old school view of things, right? I don't know, maybe she had her own practice or something and was like super wealthy, but she was super patronizing, like, you know, not wanting any processed food. And that's one thing if like you personally feel that way, but to kind of like push that on someone else and just a feeling of like I'm better than you was just, you know, coming from her really strong. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of cool too though, just to see like that character who I think maybe we've seen in real life kind of embodied in television was really interesting, because I saw someone talk about how Dev responded how a typical South Asian boy who doesn't want to upset his parent would react, right? Like, you don't want your parent, you don't want to deal with your parents' outbursts, so I'm gonna break up with you, you know, like I'm not gonna deal with that. And I think that is something that a lot of South Asian kids deal with. I remember for me, I really wanted to be a part of like drama club in middle school, right? And I knew that if I had like begged my mom enough and made enough of a fuss, she would have eventually let me go. But I didn't want to deal with that, right? Like, I didn't want to deal with, like, one thing, it's hard enough to be in drama club, then you have to like go to practices, and then you have to like convince your parent that it's okay for me to be after school for 1.5 hours at not even my school, at like a different location. So I think a lot of South Asian kids do that. They're just like, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to deal with it. And that's really sad, because Bev missed out on the chance of being in a relationship with someone who he found really attractive, who matched him intellectually, and who made him happy, because he did not want to deal with the outburst from his mom. And that's something a lot of people who are watching that can see that and relate to. Also, side note, he is South Asian, particularly Malayalee, and I'm Malayalee. So that was really cool to see a character who is from the same place as me represented in like mainstream media, because like a lot of creators will comment, if you look at like, you know, Bollywood, I don't think you ever see actors who are of a darker skin tone. So to be in America and to see this like hit show where all of the characters are not just Indian, but they're South Indian, they're from Tamil, they're from Tamil Nadu, I believe, and they're from, you know, these countries that are South India, where characteristically the people have darker skin tones. And to see a love interest who's from the same culture as me, and not just from the same culture as me, but also not light skinned, someone who's like a medium to darker skin tone, was really, really cool. So props to that. Although he definitely is one of those South Asian guys who threads, which I'm not into, but I get it. Our people have hair, so I get we have to do that. And he's actually like my age, which is funny. He's like 28 years old, I'm 29. So that's funny that that he actually looks young though. I still stand by my thought process that Paxton looks hella old. Still don't get that love interest thing, but I do appreciate the whole storyline where Davey has to learn her own self-worth. And, you know, she's been told so many times, and like a lot of South Asian women may feel this, where you're told by like society or culture that you're not attractive or you're not whatever. And she continually is told this again and again and again, like, you look weird with Paxton, you look weird with Paxton. So when we see her being insecure, there is a feeling of like, oh, you should just be more sure of yourself, right? But then also as a viewer, we have more empathy because we see why she feels that way, right? Like yeah, Paxton thinks she's pretty, and I thought she looked really stunning this season. I think she's like really like, especially her character has just like owned herself more, and but we still see that sense of being like a loser and like feeling not great because of how you're treated by your school, or like how you're treated by the people around you. So I really like that storyline and how she kind of had to come to terms with how she really felt about herself, regardless of like what her school thought. And that would be the equivalent of like, how do I, as a South Asian woman who doesn't see myself represented in like India, right? Like, how do I feel about myself even if pop culture or media does not view me as the quintessential definition of attraction, you know? Like, how can I learn to like who I am and how I look like, regardless of what mainstream media or the popular, whatever, regardless of what that view is. And I thought that was just like so interesting to dissect. And I even loved how her cousin's love interest was like a darker skinned guy. Like, that guy's in everything. I love him. He's like in a lot of, I think he plays Mindy Kaling's brother in the Mindy Project. Like, he definitely is a Mindy Kaling favorite, at least I think. So that was really cool for me to see that as well, just like that representation again. I do not like the storyline of Davey and Ben. I know that he was overall good to her, but I do not like how he went back into talking about her in such a negative way. And I do get the whole enemies to lovers storyline, but I just don't like how he talks to her. And this season, his side comments, regardless of the fact that he was like in love with her or whatever, I did not like it. And I think that it kind of perpetuates this idea of like, guys are mean to you because they like you and whatever. And I'm not a fan of that. I don't think any woman should be into a guy who puts her down. And I know that's like a tactic some guys use to like, you know, like talk down to a girl so that like, I don't know what the reasoning is. Maybe they feel less about themselves and like are more willing to talk to them. I'm not a fan of that, so did not like that. Was not a fan of Ben. I did like him some moments, but I just wish that he wasn't like that. But then again, you're writing real characters, so I guess they're gonna have flaws. But yeah, those are just like my initial thoughts. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. I like the season a lot more than I thought I would. I was talking to a friend about this and how the trailer seemed a lot more hypersexualized, and the trailer definitely is, because the focus of the show is kind of like her entering this new stage of her life sexually. But that's why I find the show kind of like confusing as to like who I'd even recommend watch it, because it doesn't have any explicit scenes, but the content is so explicit, right? And I think it could go without it. I don't think it really needs to have that storyline, and I think it then would be more appropriate for a younger demographic who maybe needs to hear that story. But those are just like my initial thoughts. I will note, I think that Mindy Kaling does tend to not have like super explicit, actually no, I think maybe the sex lives of college students, I think that might have been a little bit more explicit. I don't remember exactly. That would be fun to review too. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know if you agree or disagree, and I'll see y'all later. Oh, subscribe if you haven't, by the way, because I see, I've got the analytics and some of you are watching. If you've watched this far, hit subscribe. I'd love for you to, I don't have like one of those like terms or whatever, but if you like hearing about South Asian media, then comment down below, subscribe, so on, and let me know what other types of videos you want to see.